So my number two is Trading Places from 1983. This is a film directed
Nice.
by John Landis, starring Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, and Jamie Lee Curtis. The IMDb plot summary is a snobbish investor and wily street con artist find their positions reversed as part of a bet by two callous millionaires. This, even though it's not my number one, was the first movie I thought of when we were thinking about doing this episode about thoughts on money. I think this is just not only a classic comedy, but one that really has a lot of deep meanings that still
Mhm.
resonate, I think, today on what money means, not having it, what it can do to people that have it, how you have empathy for people that don't have it and the positions that they put themselves in and the decisions that they make. I think this movie is actually pretty complicated or complex, even though it's also just a great comedy that's like a breezy kind of fun comedy too. So had you seen this film before?
Oh yeah. Uh, not years ago, but fairly recently. Watched it during the holidays,
Oh,
as part of a holiday party at a friend's place, and was like, oh my gosh, how have I not seen this movie before? Even though I'd heard of it and just
sure.
loved it, and now this is definitely in the holiday rotation of movies. So I was so happy you put this on the list. It's just such a fun movie from head to toe, so watchable,
Hmm.
and a lot of depth.
Yeah.
That's why it has the holding power. We've talked about this often, is that really funny movies of a certain period of time, they don't scale
Hmm.
with time if they don't have the depth, and this one certainly does.
No, definitely. I mean, I think the basic conceit, as talked about in the IMDb plot summary, of rich millionaires make a bet and they basically take money away from a member of their club, Dan Aykroyd. So he was rich and now he's poor, and they basically take Eddie Murphy, who's a homeless guy in the street, and give him access to all the things that Dan Aykroyd's character had to try to determine whether it is who you are or the your environment, the money that gives you that success, which is like, that's an age old question, right? Nature or nurture. And I think this movie is very interesting in the way that it approaches that and peels it back. I mean, that opening montage of Dan Aykroyd, who's the rich guy in the beginning of the film, he's in bed. Someone has to literally like lift the covers off of him. Someone dresses him. They make him his food. They drive him, like he walks to a car. Someone drives him. He's literally like a baby, and
Yep.
that's what a rich life affords. That you get treated like you're a 4 year old, which is just hilarious. I mean, he was given his job basically too, so it's not like he really worked for any of this at all in his life. So you can clearly see he didn't earn. I mean, he didn't earn any of this wealth or status, and he's basically a child. And I love too how the Dukes, who are the two
Mhm.
millionaires here too, like their job is in like commodity trading and in finance, and those are jobs that personally I feel also hold no value in society. Like finance people, those professions don't contribute in a meaningful way to society. They just
Right.
leech off of it and take money away. And they're the villains. Like they have no class. They're bad people. They're racist.
They're racist. Yep.
They're not. They immediately just discard Dan Aykroyd, who was someone who was part of their club, and just shows you how there's really no class affinity much at the top. It's sort of like that dog eat dog world there too, which shows that yeah, money doesn't make you a good person because these guys are bad and they have all the money. But it's also interesting too, like in watching this, is just thinking about like Dan Aykroyd's character. Like he had all these friends, he had a fiance, but the second
Hmm.
the money goes away, they all dump him in one
Yep.
second. Like she's like, oh, you're not like, oh, you might have this problem, you might have a drug problem. Well, you're gone. Which also shows that money doesn't buy friendship, doesn't buy love or companionship, but it can make you think you have all these things, make you think you have friends, but you really don't. I mean, the Jamie Lee Curtis prostitute character does more for Dan Aykroyd in this movie
Hmm.
than his own fiance, who
Hmm.
supposedly was in love with him, but really was it just about the money, right? So it really makes you question all those things. And it's interesting too, just from Eddie's perspective as well, that he does the money does change him in a way. Like he starts
Hmm.
caring about, like in the beginning, he goes into the mansion, he starts to wants to steal things, and when they tell him this is your stuff, then he gets mad when people are partying in that room, maybe breaking his own things, so that
Hmm.
that sense of possession. But there's this really interesting scene too when like Dan Aykroyd is basically getting arrested for stealing. Eddie Murphy makes some comment of like, oh no, we got to like send him up the river and be hard on him because that's the only way to teach him a lesson. It's like,
Right.
dude, you were just out on the street. Like, do you
Right.
not remember that not having money puts you in positions where you have to do desperate things? And I think that's something that this movie does a great job of too, like showing you that judging people who are less fortunate for the decisions they make. You don't know what was going on in their mind. You don't know they had to steal that money because it's the only way they can pay their kid. You would have done the same thing probably in that situation. I mean, I know I would, right? Like you see desperate people or people out on the streets or people that are less fortunate and sort of jumping to, oh, I would never like, be able to like live like that or make these decisions. Like, well, you don't really know until you're put in them, which I think also this movie does a great job of showing where, Dan Aykroyd is now, yeah, living a life of crime, drinking
Mhm.
all the time. That's just, it's not because he's a bad person. It's because
Yeah.
that's the situation that he's in. And I think
Yeah.
this is a very important life
It's a
lesson to
very
remember.
empathizing movie in that sense because you empathize with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Even the rich baby, like you said, you feel sorry for the stuff that he has to endure now. So it is more about the situation as opposed to the human being. Although sometimes that can go out of hand, meaning a person can get so altered based on the situation that then at some point you have to take some ownership of your actions. It is very situational. And I think if you look at it from a more empathetic point of view, I think you see more of the why as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just a judgment.
Right, right, right. Which I think is an important lesson to remember,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to, money and the people that are less fortunate, right? It doesn't buy character, it doesn't buy friends, it doesn't buy love. And not having it means you're making decisions that are very hard decisions to make, that really do test who you are. But in desperate times, sometimes call for desperate decisions and actions. So I think that's an important lesson that this movie does a great job of showing.
I
Um,
totally agree. And it doesn't like lionize anybody. Like
no, no.
Jamie Lee Curtis is helping him, but she also starts doing that because she wants something out of this,
Hmm.
Like I feel like if this movie were made today, the good and the bad would be so underlined.
Right,
And it'll also be very sanitized. Like the Dukes are horrible people, but you need to see that, I
right.
think, to kind of
Yeah.
really understand what goes on. And that's why this movie stands the test of time because there's something truthful about it. You
Yes.
you have to see how. I mean, you can't help but think that how did the Dukes become this way, and
Hmm.
could Eddie and Dan Aykroyd, could they become that someday? Yeah, they
Right,
could.
right.
Because
Yeah.
nobody is sort of just at their core who they are. It's often very situational, like you said before. So yeah, just so brilliant and complex, like you said.
Yeah, the one thing that was interesting when I saw this time though, that the ending really
Mm,
was curious because in the end of the movie, the heroes get rewarded with money. And the
mm,
end of the movie is they're all rich now on a desert island and that's the reward, which sort of goes against I think what the movie was trying to get at. So maybe that's just the 80s creeping its ugly
yeah.
head into things. Like that was a very garish and in my mind like backwards decade where the wrong things were focused on and it was very materialistic and it was kind of gross. And I think that was the 80s part had to come, well, they have to get money at the end because then how is this not winning? I think if the movie was done now, they wouldn't sort of feel obligated to give them all money at the end as a reward. It would have been more like, the friends we made along the way is the reward or something.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
there's something truthful about that too.
I guess.
And maybe I don't know if they did this knowing fully, maybe it's just an 80s thing, like you said, but looking at it from a today's lens, that's sort of more truthful. And time will tell if these people stay kind and grounded
Hmm.
or do they become monsters over time.
Yeah.
That's the cycle, unfortunately, that goes.
Yeah. Maybe the sequel would be like Eddie and Dan as the Dukes doing this again.
Yeah, I would watch that.
That's sad. I would watch that too. But that's sad to think about that they didn't learn. I just want to be. I hope these people learn their lessons at the end of the film. That's always what I like to see. That they end of the movie because they've they're now learned their lesson. But
Yeah. Fun to rewatch. Also, I was gonna say a great 80s like stock market thing. Like what is
oh
it's
yeah,
just so fun to kind of see the madness. And I don't know if this is how it used to be for real,
it
but
was, yeah, before the
probably was.
computers. They had to
Yeah.
be doing all this stuff. Actually, on that note too, at the what they were doing in the film, the Dukes of stealing government information before it was released to the public and using it to then make
Mm,
trades on commodities was not illegal up until 2010. And when they
wow.
passed the law in 2010 to make it legal, they referenced this movie.
Wow.
in Congress and said this is going to be the Eddie Murphy law where we're now going to ban if you steal information that isn't released to the public, you'll be arrested for then making the trades based on that. Can you believe that that was legal at the time? That's insane to me. That you could, if you stole information, use it and make trades. And yeah, the stealing of information might be illegal, but not using it to make all those
Right.
trades. But now since 2010, that's been illegal. Is that
That's
crazy?
crazy.
Movies can
20.
change things. So I love
See?
when a movie actually changes society in a way, a positive way. It's nice to see that.
Uh, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What a great movie.
Yeah, it's really fun. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.